So let's continue our discussion of experience along the path. This is the fourth, probably of four videos on the subject. So somewhere in there, along these timelines, I was asked by the publisher Singing Dragon, now Hachette, to write a book on the Neijing 2, the diagram of the inner realm and inner alchemy relative to this. Had a couple of interesting experiences that I think fit into this discussion. When I was first asked, I had a pretty good window of time to dedicate to the task, and made good progress in good time. And as I was coming up on finishing it, I was working away on the floor, and I had a stack of books 4 feet high or something. I don't know why, but this entire stack fell onto my computer and knocked out the hard drive, and I was unable to retrieve the data. I came to think of it as an intervention, the reasoning around which I'm not sure. But a year or so later, after writing it again, essentially, and improving it, and deepening my understanding. So perhaps this is the cause of the intervention. I was on retreat, trying to I think the scheduled time was a couple of weeks to try and finish the book, and also while studying with a teacher. I'll mention more about that in a bit. So I was in the cabin in the woods in Virginia, I guess, by myself. And I started to feel uncomfortable in my body. I thought, pain is simply just another sensation. I'll forge ahead here and accomplish this task. And then I started to not be able to eat and keep it down. And then finally, days later, not able to drink and keep it down. And my discomfort was increasing. So it started to seem kind of serious. And then on this maybe fifth day of feeling uncomfortable, I realized I had gotten kind of crossed a threshold that was unwise to cross. And following my wife's sage advice, tried to get myself to a clinic, to a hospital or clinic that was very remote and rural. Phone didn't really work, but sporadically. And I was in a lot of pain and didn't have much energy. So I drove myself to the hospital. This is all I think you see already in the context of, yet again, the finishing of my book was interrupted through a kind of apparent intervention, or perhaps coincidence, but what is coincidence? Coincidence. So I drove myself to this clinic that was maybe 30 miles away. And it was all I could do to stay on the road. It took really all of the resources I had developed in my years of living at that time to stay on the road. And I went probably half the speed limit, just trying to keep on keeping on. And I made it. And then I managed to make it to the window, and through a sort of confusingly casual conversation with the clerk or whatever, she came to see the kind of extremity of my situation, and they got me into a ambulance, and because they couldn't handle this severity at that clinic, they got me into an ambulance and rushed me to a University of Virginia Associated Hospital. And it turned out that my appendix had burst, and I was going into sepsis. My organs were filling with fluid and getting hard, and I couldn't breathe without pain, and it was all very serious. It sounds extreme in the context of appendicitis, but at some point in the hospital, I started to depart, to cross over, to let go to another realm. And so the story is of contextual interest because of the sort of intervention aspect, and then now this near-death experience in which, in a very dreamlike, otherworldly, other realm experience, I was kind of floating up toward light and beyond in a cloud-like, mist-like realm, and these three angels appeared at my side and were holding my hands, and I don't remember now if there was kind of explicit communication, but it was very clearly a nurturing, caring support. And at that moment, there was a kind of question of what next, what now? And as I kind of surveyed my inner landscape, I felt very clear that I needed to be there for my son. My daughter was not yet born. and so I came back, and the angels brought me back, and then were kind of tangibly and like I could feel them holding my hands um, with me in the hospital room, and I made it through. They didn't even take out the appendix. They said it was necessary, but in my research, it suggested it was not. So nutritional IV and antibiotics, and made it to the far side. But so the near-death experience, part of that is the experience with the angels. I think is relevant and interesting in this kind of mystical experience context. So and then also this kind of interaction of, as I perceive it without, I guess I had a shaman once, a friend once confirm to me, or that the, two different shamans at different times suggested or confirmed that that these interruptions in the book writing were these kind of spirit interventions, or perhaps the reiteration of a karmic pattern in the past, in which that other iteration of this coherence of being was somehow persecuted, if I'm remembering right, for expressing themselves, expressing myself. So it's an interesting way to think about it, and a way that, again, one might think of these kind of apparently outlier but apparently meaningful moments in life that lead you in one direction or another, where that seemed to be a turn, a pivot, a change of some kind. So when we left off in the last video, I was talking about how a kind of awakening experience led to the desire for a more devotional relationship to practice. And at the same time, a desire for a kind of more explicit relationship in a teacher or a tradition, more explicit dialogue about awakening itself. In Taoism, and in my teacher's way, Master Wu's way, this kind of discussion is not necessarily approached head on. And though I talked about it with him, and was met with quiet acknowledgement and respect, it wasn't sort of filling out that kind of conversation in the way that I felt I needed. I don't think it was necessary, but this is what was shaping my choices. So I came upon Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, a Bun Buddhist teacher, and the timing of the initial retreat in the Dzogchen cycle was fitting for me, and everything kind of came together, and I began studying the Bun Buddhist tradition. And it's a really beautiful tradition that I came to care for and respect and become devoted within very easily and naturally and quickly. And it also turned out to be a kind of way in to devotional practice in general. You know, the structure of the practice includes prayers and meditation and physical practices and energetic practices, lots of things I was familiar with, but with this additional layer of prayer. And so in these traditions, as you may know, when you begin, or sometimes you may repeat later, this series of practices called the Nundro, which are foundational practices to prepare you and ripen your mind and energetic system for both awakening and development of that awakening. You know, in these traditions, the introduction to the natural state, the awakening to things as they are, is at the beginning, but it may or may not sort of become apparent at that time. But that is, one receives that from the teacher in the beginning. So anyway, this Nundro comes in different forms and different lineages with different teachers. This was a 9-part Nundro with a prescription of 100,000 repetitions of each of these parts. And some of them were short. I don't remember quite how many syllables, but the repetition of a line of mantra, sometimes with meaning, sometimes not, or like grammatical meaning. And so let's say a 8-part, 8-syllable mantra that's repeated 100,000 times. And you're counting with mala beads. And then one of those things is prostrations, and the prostration in particular is either in combination with or separately. In my case, separately. The Tibetan prayers were unfamiliar to me and took some getting used to. So I didn't complete it. I got, I think, 650,000 repetitions into it. What I remember that was left to do were some prostrations. Let's see, what does that mean? 250. Yeah, so I think the 100-syllable mantra, which is quite long compared to the others, and somewhere in here my daughter was born and my time availability changed and life went in other directions. But I mentioned all this because I got far enough along in this recitation and this kind of deep immersion and essentially around the clock practice. I wouldn't make great claims about my sleep practice, but it's okay sometimes. Led to another round of kind of mystical experience that was interesting and significant. And so the most pervasive was this kind of this re-entry into this sparkling world, radiant world, where all the parts and the whole was literally kind of luminous and vibrating all the time. And that, I think, is one of the great benefits of this kind of immersive, I was practicing on my own, but retreat style practice. And then there was a time within this time frame in which I was seeing, especially in kind of coherent locations, like certainly the altar at the practice center, the meditation center that the teachings were held at, I would see as, or would appear as, a very detailed, fabulous mandala, gold, radiant. So these are interesting experiences that gives a practitioner kind of insight perhaps into the source of more manifest versions of these things, like in Tonka paintings or wherever else you might, the sand painting mandalas. These patterns are natural and emergent along the path. And in this kind of pattern of practice that included prayers to begin, and then either non-meditation, meditation, but seated, or energetic practices, and then would resolve in prayer as well. And it gave me a kind of access to the, or a place for my devotional instinct, drive, maybe, to go. So it held that devotion very naturally. So in the end, I found that Taoism was still my home, and if you think of in terms of past lives, I think there's probably overlap with both paths, but the kind of weight of the Taoist path in me felt stronger. I was open to any possibility at the time, but that was where I arrived, back home in the Tao. And then this opportunity to connect to temple-based lineages. First at the Parting Clouds temple, I went there with a couple of Taoist brothers, 2018 or 19, and we were all ordained for the first time. And Master Huang was an interesting teacher, and had a lot to give, and well, we didn't get specific scriptural training. There were some, it was more of a talismanic healing tradition that he was passing on, and it included some recitation of incantations, especially, to kind of activate and set the ground for the practice of drawing and giving talisman for healing. I had an interesting experience while there. I'm going to let this video run on a little bit because I expect it to be the last for a while in this category. So when we went to the Parting Clouds Temple, I was kind of mysteriously weak. This sort of cloud of symptoms were Lyme-like, I think. But generally it was just kind of a fatigue and weakness that I hadn't been able to resolve in my own practice. So while we were there, I asked for help from Master Huang, and he agreed, and the dormitories at the temple were in disrepair, so we stayed at a hotel down in the nearest town. And so Master Huang came over one night. And his method of diagnosis was to turn the lights off, perceive your chi body, takes 10 seconds or something, turn them back on, then he's got an idea of what to do. So he did this. He said, I have 2 talisman I want to give you. Come tomorrow before we study. I'll show you these talisman. I'll make them, and you can consume them. And consuming them, in this case, they're written in cinnabar on yellow rice paper. And you then burn the talisman, letting the ash fall into a bowl of water that is then energized with that universal pattern. And then you consume the ashes and the water in 3 sips. And so I did this. And the diagnosis was just a yin entity was clinging on. And so I took these talisman, we went about our day of study, and came back to the hotel. And before the fatigue was somewhat extreme. Like I couldn't mow the lawn at home. It took too much effort, and walking through the airports to get to China, I'd get out of breath just walking on the flat. So it was kind of extreme. So I got home at the end of that day, and our rooms were on the 4th or 5th floor, 5th, I think. And I was feeling kind of good. I wanted to test the feeling. And so I sprinted up 5 flights of stairs. Everything seemed perfectly resolved. So it was an interesting experience of this kind of this particular form of energetic healing. So we were ordained there. This was a Wudong a complete reality Wudong Xuanwu lineage. Xuanwu is the Dark Warrior, also known as Junwu. It's the 36th, which is a complete yin, 6 times 6. 6 is a yin number, 9 is a yang number. Lao Tzu was the initial This was the 36th incarnation of Lao Tzu. So this tradition has specifically a healing talisman-oriented lineage. And during that trip, the translator who connected us to Master Hong was kind of flipping through some pictures of when he had been at a Taoist conference recently, kind of a national, everybody in China gathering. And I saw a picture of Master Ju, my abbot friend from 2008. And I had a kind of, startled, strong reaction. And like, I know him. Can you, take me to see him? Because my speaking Chinese is not sufficient to travel on my own or to connect to receive teachings. So that's how it all came together, that I was able to return to the Dragon Gate Caves and be ordained there in what the Parting Clouds ordination was special to me. The Dragon Gate Caves connection is like was like a coming home, and I think I described those experiences, the temple experiences, in another video already. Well, when I first went, the experiences in the cave. There was the first thunderstorm of spring happened on the day I was ordained, including leaving some snow on the mountain. So there are lots of beautiful synchronicities, and I don't think there are stories in this context to share from that journey. So why don't we leave it there? It's a lot to think upon. I think, as we think about kind of an arc of experience over the course of practice, there are these kind of, at the beginning, there's these sudden changes, maybe dramatic experience, whether it's saliva that tastes like honey, or eventually the sort of sudden awakening style experience, the pulsing of the chakras. So these are, markers along the way. And then I found, while there are kind of moments of mystical experience that stand out from the others, the main thing happening is this kind of persistence of a kind of layer of clarity. I think this is the mere experience that is with me all the time, and kind of has the opportunity to gradually massage out my perceptual misunderstandings of duality. And so my access and direct understanding has improved over time, and I, as much as I think I understand, the feeling and state of leaving things as they are, that the conceptual relationship to that does seem to develop and deepen over time. And so I hope that mapping of experience is interesting and useful. Take care. See you soon.